Hi Brandy. You mentioned that you had some questions. It's a good time to talk, so let me know what's on your mind.
Well, Mommy asked me to draft a letter agreement. I told her that I would do that for her, but, to be honest, I don't really know what that means. Is a letter agreement the same thing as notice?
No, but the drafting is similar. A notice is any notification that one party to an agreement provides to another party in connection with the requirements of the agreement. Not every communication is a notice. Only communications that are required in connection with the enforcement of a term of an agreement. In simple terms, think of a notice as a communication that provides information to the other party in an agreement, when it is required by the terms of the agreement. When you draft a notice, draft it as you would a business letter. Include the proper addresses. Include a subject line. Include background in an introductory paragraph.
I see. So how is a letter agreement different?
Well, you can find the meaning of a letter agreement in its name. A letter agreement is an agreement, or a contract, in the form of a letter.
As simple as that?
Yes, as simple as that.
I think I need to understand a bit more. Can you give me some examples of when I should draft a notice?
Certainly. There are a lot of common examples of when you might need to draft and send a notice. For example, you might need to send a notice of breach or a notice that the company has accepted a deliverable that a contractor prepared. If the company moves to a new address, you would have to send out notices of the new address. That's usually required in the notice provision of a contract. Really, anytime a contract states that notice must be given, the contract is telling you when you are contractually required to send a notice. For the CL contract administrators, the most common example might be a termination notice when CL wants to terminate a publishing agreement in accordance with the agreement.
Does the recipient need to countersign the notice?
No, that is not required, but sometimes you might want to get a signature to acknowledge receipt. I usually just send notices via traceable courier, like FedEx, and I require that the recipient sign for the package.
That makes sense. So how about some examples of letter agreements?
When the company does not have the right to terminate an agreement, you might prepare a letter agreement that provides for termination of the contract. Among other things, putting a termination agreement into the form of a letter can be less adversarial or intimidating. Other types of agreements that you might memorialize in a letter are contracts that change business terms, such as a delivery schedule or the location that work will be performed. I usually ask myself whether a letter agreement will be shorter than a page or two. The longer the letter agreement, the less likely I am to want to use that form of agreement.
Interesting. What else should I know about letter agreements?
Keep in mind that the form of an agreement is not what matters to us. We care about the substance, and that is true regardless of form. Sometimes it is just easier to memorialize an agreement in a letter, especially when the new agreement is collateral to the existing agreement. Think of a letter agreement as a notice that is not effective until it is accepted. Draft a letter agreement as you would a notice, but make it clear that the document memorializes an agreement. Add instructions for acceptance and always included a deadline after which acceptance is no longer permitted. Included a signature block for the other party or parties, and, if there are more than two parties, note that the agreement is not effective until signed by all. If relevant, you can also incorporate elements of an existing agreement, for example if you are preparing an amendment or an addendum.
Should a letter agreement include all of the elements of a formal contract?
A letter agreement is still a real contract. You need to include the parties, the date, a clear reference to underlying agreement, the nature of the agreement, including the duties and obligations of both parties, and rules for acceptance.
Should I include choice of law in a notice?
You tell me.
I would think not, because I doubt I can force the other party to accept the choice of law that I choose.
Exactly right.
Do you have time for one more question?
I have as much time as you need.
Should notices and letter agreements be more casual than more traditional contracts? Should I use natural language or legalese?
If natural language means clear and concise wording, always use natural language. Contracts of every nature need to be clear, whether in a letter agreement or a more formal contract. Remember, drafting is for the benefit of the business people and the jury. Just keep it clear and concise
I
and it will
think
be
that I
better for
understand
everyone.
now. Thanks.
As always, I've been happy to help.